Today is July the 8th, 2003. I'm here with Professor William Pulte of SMU College and Mr. Steve Allred, who's doing the photography on this film we're doing today. My name is Mike Brownlow, and we're at the home of a lady who was very active in the Oak Cliff community back in 1963. She worked in Oak Cliff at one of the better known restaurant facilities in Oak Cliff. On November the 22nd of 1963, as many people know, President Kennedy was assassinated in downtown Dallas in Dealey Plaza. And then some 45 minutes after the president was shot in Oak Cliff at the corner of 10th and Patton, a Dallas police officer was shot and killed, and his name was Officer J.D. Tippit. Officer Tippit, when he was killed, was an 11-year veteran of the Dallas Police Department at that time. The alarmment between the assassination of President Kennedy and the murder of J.D. Tippit had many similarities due to the fact that many people that were involved knew each other. And Oak Cliff certainly seemed to play a role in people that were involved in the assassination, witnesses and people actually involved in the case over the last 39 years, information that has come forward. Many Dallas police officers who knew certain people that were in crime, such people as Jack Ruby, the Campese family, just to name a few. And these names have all been mentioned in many researchers' books and many interviews done over the years. But the lady that we're here with today at her home, she does not want to be on camera. As you know, many witnesses have met very faithful, I should say unfaithful, deaths. And some people still don't want to talk. After all these years, I really don't think it's into captivity of badness, but then again, you never know. But that certainly is her choice, and she doesn't want her name said. Now, you will hear her voice as I ask her a question, Professor Pulte and I, but she will not be seen on camera. Ma'am, one of the first questions I want to ask you, working at this establishment that you worked at, you had seen Officer J.D. Tippit on many occasions, is that true?
Yes.
And Officer Tippit worked there primarily on weekends?
Yes.
As a security guard for the man who owned the establishment, right?
Yes.
Within the week of the assassination and within a week after the assassination, did you see J.D. Tippit?
Yes.
And on one occasion, about a week, maybe a week and a half before the assassination, I believe you told me that at one point you did see Jack Ruby there talking to J.D. Tippit one time. Is that true?
Yes, they had coffee in the back.
They had coffee in the back of the restaurant. And you didn't hear any of the conversation?
No.
But you certainly knew them by face, and you can say that you knew that J.D. Tippit and Jack Ruby did sit at a booth and drink coffee about a week and a half before the assassination.
At a table.
At a table. Okay. Also, you've told me in previous conversations we've had that Officer Tippit, on the day of the assassination, he was to meet another officer there, Officer Martin, and they were going to have lunch together. Is that true?
Yes.
And the reason you knew this because the other officer, Martin, had made this comment to you. Is that true?
Yes, he told me that Tippit was going code 7.
And that meant that he was coming in to have lunch with you.
Yeah.
And do you remember the time, just in estimating, I know you can't remember the exact second and moment, but about what time, and this was on November the 22nd?
Yes. It was probably, Owen Martin came in earlier that morning, and then he came back, and it was probably, it was right at our real busy time. It was probably around 12:15 or 12:30 when he came in.
12:15 or 12:30 p.m. on the afternoon of November the 22nd, 1963.
Yes.
That's when Martin
had
this conversation with you.
Yeah, because he sat in the front booth. He said that Tippit was going code 7, and he was ordering their lunch.
Okay. And then some few minutes later, maybe 6 or 7 minutes later, Officer Martin left in quite of a hurry, correct?
It was probably within about 5 minutes because
5 minutes.
lunch, getting lunch up, it could have been a little longer because it was during our busy time, and but their food hadn't come up yet because I think it was about to come out whenever he got a radio call and he jumped up and he said, "I gotta go."
He said, "I have to go," and that was Officer Martin,
Mm-hmm.
and he left at that point.
Yes.
And of course, J.D. Tippit never made it
No.
that day.
No.
Now, did you ever see, in your knowledge of your vision, Lee Harvey Oswald at Austin's barbecue? Any question that you don't want to ask, you certainly do not have to ask.
I think I've seen him there a couple of times.
And let me say this, the lady I'm speaking with is not the only person. Many people have said that they have seen Lee, that they had seen Lee Harvey Oswald present at this establishment 4, 5, 6 times before the assassination as Jack Ruby. So the lady that I am speaking with is saying nothing that hadn't been said by numerous people and several Dallas police officers, some who are still living, some who are dead, but many people said that they had seen Lee Harvey Oswald at this establishment. Another question, did you know Harry Olson?
Yes.
And you had seen Harry Olson at this establishment.
Yes.
Over the years that you knew Officer Tippit as a more or less a security officer there at the establishment, could you name some of the officers that you saw him there with over the say 3 or 4 months before the assassination?
Bill Anglin, Owen Martin, Jimmy Stewart, Lester Mosley.
That's fine, but and that just covers the fact that many officers did come to this establishment, this restaurant establishment, and ate there and congregated and had coffee.
Every police officer that worked the Southwest substation was in Austin's every day.
Yes, you don't have, unless you won't say the name, that's fine. Another question. There was a story reported about 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks after the assassination of President Kennedy and after the murder of J.D. Tippit, that J.D. Tippit had had an affair with a young waitress. This story has been known since December of '63, and they tried to tie it together. Some people claim that this woman's husband was actually the man who shot J.D. Tippit. And I have never believed that, and I wanted to ask your opinion on that, man.
No. Steve was just not the type.
Exactly. This is information that I found too. Now, the waitress in question, and her name has been in books, it has been in interviews, and I am going to say it, and I take full responsibility for this. My name is Michael Brown, and I'm the one asking this question. The lady's name was, that we know her today as Johnny Witherspoon. At that time, of course, she was Johnny Thompson. And she worked at this establishment along with you and many other waitresses, is that true?
Yes.
Did you physically ever see her and J.D. together?
Yes.
That's right. Now, about a week and a half after J.D. Tippit was killed and they had his funeral, he was buried, were you present at this establishment and witnessed the fact that Miss Marie Tippit, J.D. Tippit's widow, came into Austin's barbecue and made a scene?
Yes.
And you were present at this?
Yes.
And I like to say for the record, before this lady told me this, I had first heard this story back in 1971, and it was told to me by Officer Roscoe White. It was around May of 1971 when Officer White told me this himself. And this is how I first came into the account of this story. And then I heard it many times, but before I'm having this conversation today with this witness. Professor Pulley, would you like to ask a question at this point?
I think I have three very brief questions. You mentioned before that you knew Officer Harry Olson when you saw him. You knew who it was. Did you ever see him there in the restaurant, perhaps with other officers?
Yes.
Did you ever see him sitting with J.D. Tippit?
Yes.
Could you? I know it's been a long time, but could you estimate how often you might have seen Olson with Tippit? I mean, maybe once a week or maybe once a month.
Yeah, probably once a week.
And that's interesting because I don't believe Olson was assigned, maybe he was at that time, assigned to the Southwest substation. Before Olson had been assigned to the downtown. Had been assigned down. I guess, is it your impression that Olson at that time was at the Southwest substation?
Yes.
I have one other question about when you said that you believed that you had seen Oswald maybe twice in the restaurant. I gathered that you believe that it was Oswald, but that you're not certain that it was, but that you think that it very likely was Oswald. Would that be correct way to put it, or are you certain that it was Oswald?
He was in there with a man and he was talking in a foreign language.
Oh.
They were sitting in a booth. J.D. was standing in front of the jukebox and they were sitting in the booth directly beside the jukebox. And when I took them coffee, he was talking in a foreign language and the man sitting across from him was also talking in a foreign language.
Naturally, one would think that it was Russian. At that time, had you heard Russian enough that you could kind of guess whether it was Russian or something?
No, I had no idea what language it was.
What was that other man who was speaking the foreign language? Was he about what age would you say he was?
He was probably around 40.
I have one other question. When you saw Jack Ruby seated at a table with J.D. Tippit, do you believe that it was him, or are you certain that it was those two people?
Oh, I'm certain it was Jack Ruby. He used to try to get me to go to work for him all the time.
Right, and also J.D., you were certain that it was J.D. Tippit
Yeah.
with him?
Yes.
You knew both, in other words, you knew both individuals very well in a sense. I mean,
Yes.
You knew exactly who they were.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Those were all the questions I had.
I'd like to collaborate on some of the questions that was just asked to this lady. As the years have went by, I have been researching the Kennedy assassination and the murder of J.D. Tippit since 1974, when I really got into it. Being raised in Oak Cliff and going to school in Oak Cliff, I met many Dallas police officers in 1968, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74. And many of them, we had conversations about the assassination and the murder of J.D. Tippit. The statements that this lady that we're interviewing just said was said to me by many people. In fact, I'll go to the point, the meeting that the talking that she was talking about, where she heard Oswald talking in Russian with this other man. Many people and 3 Dallas police officers who saw his picture during the time of the assassination and years after has told me that it was George de Moranche, a man who certainly spoke fluently Russian, and he was Russian. And when Marie and Marina Oswald and Lee came back from Russia, he kind of supported them and gave them help. And I understand that he helped and introduced the Oswalds to Ruth Payne, the place where Marina was living at the time of the assassination. And I would be willing to bet to a 99.9% probability the man that was there that evening in the restaurant speaking of Oswald was George DeMornshea, and I say this because 3 different Dallas police officers told me this. And the other thing in this establishment was, as she said earlier, it was like a family place. People went there and everybody knew everybody. And there was a lot of people that go there. It was a very, very, very popular place. They had great food. The owner was well known. I can't mention his name because I haven't gotten permission to do that at this point. But I'll just say the owner. I can say that legally. And he was well known. He had many customers. He had many friends that went into this place. And it was 1963, and particular food that he served, a lot of people ate and loved at that time. So that's why a lot of people went there, and then they become to know each other over the years, and people that worked there. And a lot of the policemen that went in there became friends with the waiters and the waitresses and the cooks at this particular place. And so this is how all these people come to know each other. And certainly in anything like that, when something happens or anything is going on and you've got an alarming of people involved or hear conversation, where you're going to have talk. Some may be true, some may be not, but they certainly know what they saw and heard. There's no doubt that the lady that we're interviewing today certainly knew J.D. Tippit because she had seen him many times as working security. And as she certainly stated a while ago, along with her statement, many other people said that they saw Jack Ruby at this establishment many, many times. So, and 2 or 3 times Lee Harvey Oswald was seen there by several different people. Another question, ma'am, that is always certainly being now, getting back to the affair with the waitress that Officer Tippit had. It has been said over the years that Officer Tippit suppressed a child with this lady, and that they did have a baby. Now, I will say this because Miss Witherspoon, I had the pleasure of meeting her for the first time about 3 weeks ago from this day, maybe a month ago, at her home now. And Mr. Allred was with me, and we talked with her outside. She was standing in the door, and we stood outside of her iron screen and porch. And we asked her a few questions, and she certainly did admit. She said, yes, I did have a relationship with J.D. Tippit. And I asked her about having a child with J.D. Tippit, and she told me that didn't happen. If you care to, would you comment, do you know that if they did have a child, as many people have said they did, or is that something you don't know?
She has a child that has J.D. Tippit's eyes to the T.
Yes, and many people have said that the eyes. J.D. had some very distinctive eyes, and many people I've heard many people say that. You can't say for personally sure that you know, but yes, I understand what you're saying. Another question that I asked Miss Witherspoon, I asked her, did she ever live on 10th Street? And long before I ever met you, ma'am, like I said, in the late 60s, early 70s, talking to people who lived on 10th Street, told me that she did. And 5 or 6 Dallas police officers who knew her said that she lived on 10th and Patton, second house from the corner on the south side of the street. Well, she said to Mr. Allred and myself, just like I said 3 weeks ago, she said, I never lived on 10th Street. Do you know in your mind for a fact that she did or didn't?
Yes, she did.
And that was in around 63.
Right.
Not for a little bit before Officer Tippit was murdered.
Yes.
On the very corner house were 2 ladies, Virginia and Barbara Davis. Did you know them?
I think they used to come into Austin's once in a while for lunch.
Yes, this is what I've been told. And did you ever come into the acquaintance of a man named Max Long? Max was probably 5'10", but a little heavy. He was an ex-professional boxer. He probably weighed about 225, muscular. It has been said over the years that he was associated and did certain works for Jack Ruby. That's why I asked you that. He was had a receding hairline, but he weighed about 225, 230. Did you know Mr. Long?
Yes.
And you also came into acquaintance with him at the restaurant?
Yes.
Okay. In your opinion, did J.D. Tippit, what was his manner to you? In other words, what type of man did he seem to you?
He was a very friendly person. Everybody liked him. A lot of police seemed to rely on him. A lot of police would come in Austin's and talk to him about things.
And in your years of knowing Officer Tippit there at the establishment where he worked, did you ever see him just directly mistreat anybody or for without any cause or anything of that nature?
No, I never seen him mistreat anybody, but if you were JD's friend, he would help you.
Yes, certainly, and that's been told me many times too. The reason I asked you that question, many people have said over the years that JD was real belligerent, and other people that I've talked to, people who I certainly feel that knew him, didn't seem to see him that way. They said that, you know, that he wouldn't take any BS off anybody. He put you in your place, but he wouldn't just start anything or try to harass someone because he was a police officer. Is that the way you saw it?
No, he didn't do that there because he worked security, and on Friday and Saturday we had Sunset High School basically.
Many of the high school kids.
From 10 to 2 in the morning.
Yes.
And they would act up and do a lot of antics, and I never seen JD get real tough with them.
Yeah, he would just stop them or whatever.
Right.
But not to the extreme of beating somebody or...
No.
Okay, that's what I've always heard. The Marie Tippit fiasco that happened when she came into the establishment some week and a half after the assassination, and you were present along with the other people who I know was present. Do you remember, did she call any name to your remembrance? If you certainly don't remember, you don't have to answer that question. Or was she looking for anybody in particular?
She was real upset. She wanted to know which waitress up there was putting flowers on her husband's grave.
I'd like to call it again and say this, what the statement that she just made was told to me by 3 other people who worked at this establishment and 1 Dallas police officer. What this lady just told me long before I met her. The lady I'm speaking with I've known for about a year, but long in the early 70s. The thing that she just said has already been told to me many, and I think it's been mentioned in some books, so it's nothing new, but the fact that she was there, she can talk about it because she was present. Another great thing on the Tippit murder was the time that he was killed. When the man who ran to the police car and said, "Hey, we have a shooting out here at 10th and Patton." This was recorded on the Dallas Police dicta belt at about 1:16. So we feel like Officer Tippit, and from his testimony, the man, and his name was Domingo Benavides, everybody knows his name is in many books. He didn't run directly because he kind of waited till the gunman that he saw got out of sight. Then he ran up there and he got on the radio in the police car. And that report came over the radio at 116, so we felt like Officer Tippit was shot at about 116. Now, you have stated that Officer Martin was there at the restaurant between 12 and 12:15, waiting on Officer Tippit to come and join him for lunch. In some books and of statements that have been given out over the years, it has been reported that J.D. Tippit supposedly went home at about 11 o'clock, maybe 11:10, and had lunch with his wife and their youngest child at that time. And he made some statements to her that, you know, the president is in town, and I would love to see him, but I'm glad I'm not downtown having the responsibility of gardening. And he told her that he said, you know, we have a lot of nuts, hope anything don't happen. But with your account of the fact that Officer Martin said that JD was going code 7, and he certainly was coming to meet him at lunch, and also William Anglin had said he had had coffee or tea at the Rebel Drive-In with JD at about 11:15. Then there's no way, as you and I just said earlier, we were talking before we started the interview, there's no way that JD could have went home and ate lunch with his wife. Would you collaborate on that? In your opinion, due to the fact of what you know, could J.D. Tippit have had went home and yet at the same time been en route to Austin Barbecue?
Well, I don't know why. I mean, he didn't live that far from Austin's. I mean, I don't know. I just know that Owen Martin said JD was going code 7, to me meant that JD was in his squad car and was coming to Austin's for lunch.
Yes, and that's what you're saying is very true, because with Anglin saying that evidently I think Anglin had asked JD to eat lunch with him, and he told him that he was going to eat lunch with someone else. They did have a cup of coffee or a glass of tea together. And I think was that maybe somewhere around 11:30, 11:45 that JD left en route to the establishment where you were at to meet Officer Martin. Of course, he never made it. There was a strange element of time, some 6 to 8 minutes, from J.D. Tippit's last transmission over his car radio, in the radio in the squad car, till he was shot. At 12:54, he told dispatcher Mary Jackson of the Dallas Police Department that he was at 8th and Lancaster and that he was at large for any emergency. And this was his last known transmission, because they tried to contact him after that and they couldn't. At about 1:02, 1:03, he was seen down on Zanes and Ewing, Lancaster, at the Gloco service station by Mr. and Miss Volkland and 3 of the guys that worked there at the station. A guy named Ainsworth was one of them. And they all 5 testified they saw J.D. sitting in his squad car, J.D. Tippit, and that he took off at a very high rate of speed at about 1:02 or 1:03. Estimating the time that he left there at 1:02, 1:03, nobody knows where he went, but at approximately 1:09 or 1:08 or 1:09, he wound up at the Top 10 record shop on the corner of Bishop and Jefferson. And the owner, Mr. Doug Starkey, and his worker Louis Cardenas were there. And they said that JD came in and made a phone call from the phone there in the record shop, and that apparently he got in touch with no one, because they said he stood there as if it rained several times, and he didn't talk to him. He slammed the phone down as if he was mad and hurried out and got back in his squad car and took off. And they watched him as he left the corner of Bishop and Jefferson. And this would have been at about 1:11 when he left the Top 10 record shop, and then 3 minutes later, 4 minutes later, 1:14, 1:15, he shot at the corner of 10th and Patton. I've done this interview with you, ma'am, today to establish the facts of things that you've known, and a lot of people have made a big deal about this, so I'm going to ask you, and there's been pictures of him, I don't know why. To the best of your remembrance in seeing J.D. Tippit, what was his description? What was height, size, that you remember?
JD was probably 6'2", 6'3", coal black hair, big, round, vivid blue eyes. Well built.
And I'm glad you said that. I'm very glad, because a lot of researchers have said that J.D. Tippit was like 5'11", and I thought, no. Many Dallas police officers told me this man J.D. was at least 6'2", if not 6'3", just as you said.
Yeah, he was
very,
tall.
very cold steel blue eyes. That's how they described it to me, and black hair. And you could tell that he had his descent of Indian, so he was kind of dark.
Olive skinned.
Yes, that's exactly what they said, exactly. So we cleared that up, because we certainly saw him in many occasions. At the establishment where you saw J.D. Tippit, and I guess first met him, before you saw J.D. Tippit at the restaurant establishment, had you ever seen him before?
No.
You had never seen him before, that's. And do you know who his partner was at that time? Was it Martin or Bill Anglin or?
Bill Anglin was his riding partner, and then Owen Martin.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I was told too at that time, 63. In the years as after the murder of Officer Tippit and the assassination of President Kennedy, certainly things were said and talked. Did you ever hear that Marie Tippit had previous knowledge of J.D.'s death, or that somebody was going to try to kill him? Did you ever hear that?
No.
Okay. That has been said, and I've never held any water to that. I like to say that myself, but that has been said. Of course, it's also been said that Miss Kennedy knew the president was going to be assassinated. I've never held any water to that either. But
I think she knew he was having an affair.
Yes.
Before.
Yes, I do too. Several people seem to think that she did know prior to his death that he had an affair. She may not have known who with, but I certainly think she knew that something was going on.
No, I don't. She knew. I think she knew that it was somebody at the restaurant,
Yes,
but because she would call.
Yes. To your knowledge, did J.D. sometime bring his son to the restaurant with him?
Yes, several times.
He did. And you knew him as Alan, right?
Alan. Mm-hmm.
And
he was about 11 or 12 then.
at that time, yeah. Now, prior to the assassination and the murder of Officer Tippit, you had worked there about 2 years,
Yes.
and you would say, safe to say that you went to work there in the summer of '61.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, I don't think there's any other question that we need to add to this. Mr. Allred, you have anything you'd like to ask Miss Lady? I have been here with this lady today. It is July 8th, 2003. Professor William Pulte was here a little earlier. He had to leave for an appointment. And I'd like to say that the murder of Officer J.D. Tippit was a mystery, and is a mystery still to this day. Nobody really knows what happened that fateful Friday. It was a fateful Friday. It was a tragic Friday. A lot of strange things happened downtown Dallas and in Oak Cliff. Over the years, and it's been 39 years, will be soon 40 this coming November. Many people have said that J.D. Tippit, Jack Ruby, and Lee Harvey Oswald knew each other. This is my last question to you now. In your opinion, or if you can state for fact, would you agree to that, or do you know that for a fact, that they all three knew each other?
They all three would come into the restaurant and they all three talked, so I assume that they knew each other.
That's the best way you can answer that, because that's what many people have said, the very words you just said, that they saw. Sometimes people have said they saw J.D. Tippit and Lee Harvey Oswald together. People said they saw Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby together. People saw J.D. Tippit and Jack Ruby together. People said they saw all three of them together. Not only at the establishment where you work, but downtown, at Ruby's Club, the Carousel, and other places. So many people have said this over the years, and certainly people that saw it. A lot of researchers have tried that. No, they haven't tried, they've done it. They've taken people's testimony and things that they saw and tried to twist it to their way, or the way they wanted it to be. Or they try to say it wasn't true at all, and it's a damn shame, because a lot of them have got into this thing for money purposes only, and they don't know a damn thing about this Saturday and other Tippit murder. They call themselves self-proclaimed experts. And like I've done with you today, I try to let the people talk and know what they knew and was there and saw things. I don't think, in reality, I'd like to go on record saying this. At the time J.D. Tippit was killed, there were two people who was very close to the shooting, and neither one of them actually saw it. I said two, I'll go back and reframe that, I'll go to three. They were Helen Markham, who was a waitress. She was walking on Patton Street South, going to Jefferson to catch the bus. Domingo Benavides, the mechanic who worked for Ted Calloway at Deuce Motors. He was coming west on 10th Street in his truck, going to get a part number for a carburetor he was fitting to pick up. And then the cab driver, William W. Scoggins. He was sitting at the corner of 10th and Patton in his cab, eating his lunch and drinking a cup of coffee. The only one of the three that could have actually saw the man pull the trigger would have been Domingo Benavides, because he was going west in his pickup and he was looking in the direction. Mr. Scoggins' view was blocked by some bushes and shrubbery, and he was eating his hamburger and his coffee. And Miss Markham was standing over on the northwest corner. She had saw the police car pass by in an eastern direction, and she looked down that way a couple of times. I don't know if she was actually looking when the man pulled the trigger. I think she had looked back straight, or maybe even looked to the west when she heard the shots, and then she saw the man running toward her in a western direction, as did Mr. Scoggins. But they were the closest three people, and they could not give in full account of what happened, because I don't think either of the three actually saw the man when he pulled the trigger. As you know and heard over the years now, a lot of people said that Oswald was not the man who shot Tippit. I believe he was. I believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was involved in the assassination of President Kennedy. Was he a shooter from the 6th floor window? That's another story. I'm really not sure. I don't know. I know many people that believe that he was. I know some women who said that he was on the 2nd floor in the lunchroom at the time the shots were fired. If that's true and their testimony was true, he could not have been on the 6th floor. One Dallas police officer, Marion Baker, had an encounter with Oswald some 39 seconds after the shots from the 6th floor. And that being true, Oswald could have not have been on the 6th floor, even though he was accused of the crime, arrested, course, Jack Ruby shot him that Sunday, November the 24th, so we'll never know. I have my doubts as to Oswald being a shooter. I do believe that he was involved. I do believe Lee Harvey Oswald knew President Kennedy was going to be assassinated. I do believe that Lee Harvey Oswald knew Jack Ruby sometime prior to the assassination, and that he knew Officer J.D. Tippit. I believe that Officer Tippit, on the day of the assassination, when the words came over at the 12:45 description of the suspect, and the fact that the Texas School Book Depository was mentioned, Officer Tippit knew that Oswald worked there. He put two and two together real quick as he heard the description of the suspect, and he began to search Oak Cliff, knowing that Oswald knew that Jack Ruby's apartment was in Oak Cliff. Oswald lived in Oak Cliff. Ruby had many ties in Oak Cliff, and in all probability, this was the way Oswald was coming, and he did. And unfortunately, they met at the corner of 10th and Patton, somewhere between 113 and 115. And when J.D. Tippit approached Lee Harvey Oswald and then got out of his squad car and began to walk around the front to ask him questions or to arrest him or to search him or whatever he was going to do, Lee Harvey Oswald shot and killed J.D. Tippit because he was involved as part of the assassination. He may not have been a shooter of President Kennedy, but I've researched this thing now for many years. As the man here with me doing the film today, Mr. Allred, I can say this legally because I do and am associated with Robert Groten. Robert is a long-time researcher of the case. He's considered the world's leading authority on the case, and he probably is for the photographic expert. Robert doesn't believe that Oswald shot President Kennedy at all, and it's a very good possibility. And in all probability, he may be right, because like I said, it is, in my mind, there's great doubt that Oswald fired any shots from the depository. The one thing that Robert and I certainly disagree on is the Tippit shooting. I believe that Oswald shot Tippit. Robert Groten doesn't believe that he did at all, and he states that very well in all the books he's written. Some people said that there were accomplices at the Tippit shooting, that there was more than one shooter. One man in particular, and I'll say his name, Jack Tatum, who in 1978 came forward 15 years later and said that he was a witness to the Tippit shooting. But it was 15 years later before he come forward, which I can understand that because witnesses were scared. I'll give him that. But what he described, Domingo Benavides, Bill Scoggins, or Helen Markham didn't see, and they were there before he rode through in his car. And none of the three saw what he supposedly saw. Another man who was in his house, he heard the shots and ran outside. Within seconds of the shots at 10th and Patton, Frank Semino, he too didn't see what Mr. Tatum saw. Two other men who were standing at the corner of Denver and 10th, Jimmy Burt and William Smith, who were witnesses. They had saw Oswald walking west just a few moments before the shots were fired. They didn't see what Jack Tatum saw. Mr. Tatum said he saw Oswald shoot across the car, and the officer fell. He was looking in his rearview mirror. The officer fell, and then Oswald walked around the back of the squad car, stood over the officer, point blank, and shot him in the head. When all the evidence and other witnesses seemed to the fact that all the shots were fired across the hood of the car, and that Oswald took off on a slow trot running. So we don't know what happened. But what we're trying to clear up is, and I think we've certainly done it along with your interview and many other people I've talked with, is J.D. Tippit scrounged into something he probably didn't want to that day, unfortunately. And being a police officer, he knew that two men that he knew was involved, and I really believe that he was going to arrest Lee Harvey Oswald. At the time, along with the R.S. Nelson, and I think maybe Bill Anglin, and another officer, Alexander, they were only about 4 police officers in Oak Cliff at that moment, because all the attention had been attracted to downtown because of the assassination. So JD was in that particular area alone. And I have never seen a report where he called in and said, I'm pulling over to question a suspect here at the corner of 10th and Patton. I don't believe he did. If he did, nobody's ever seen that copy of that transmission. I think that he acted alone, and when he got out of his car on the left-hand side, the driver's side, and stepped out, he put himself in an odd position because Oswald was standing on the right-hand side of the car on the sidewalk, probably gun already at least in his hand in his coat pocket, and when he drawed his gun, Tippit had to kind of veer to his right to try to defend himself. Officer Tippett's gun was laying under his body. Evidently he was able to draw his pistol, but not fast enough before he was shot by Lee Harvey Oswald. I say that he was shot by Lee Harvey Oswald. All the evidence that I've accumulated over the years, and let me say the Warren Commission, some of their some findings were true and some weren't. They felt that Lee Harvey Oswald shot J.D. Tippit. Most Dallas police officers that I know felt that Lee Harvey Oswald shot J.D. Tippit. He was identified, the man that was identified, and this is the last of my interview here, I won't say this. When Officer J.D. Tippit was shot, and the man that was running away from the scene was seen by Helen Markham, Bill Scoggins, Ted Calloway, Virginia and Barbara Davis, Sam Ginyard, Ariel Patterson, Warren Reynolds, a gentleman named Mr. Lewis, I can't recall his first name. All these people saw the man running away. And every one of those people, every one of them, identified Lee Harvey Oswald as being the man that they saw running with a gun in his hand, appearing to be shaking the bullets out. And that he was identified subsequently by every one of them. And one lady, a black lady named Aquila Clemens, claimed that she saw two men running in different directions and they pointed at each other. And I simply think that she got, Jimmy Burt and William Smith ran up to the scene right after the shot, and they were arriving as she ran out of her house. And she said one was a thin black-haired man and Jimmy Burt was very thin, and she said the other guy was short and stubby. William Smith was probably 205, 210 pounds and heavily built. And she saw them running up, pointing and shouting, and Frank Cimino had run out of his house at that point, and the cab driver. And this is what Miss Aquila Clemens saw. It has been said over the years too that Max Long was present, and he could have been. I believe that he could have been because the testimony of a lady named Miss Milan, whom I interviewed and talked with. I say interview, I talked with her. I was going to interview. I didn't get the chance to interview her because she died about a week before I was going to interview her, but I did talk to her, Professor Pulte and I, and she was in her own residence across the street, and she heard shots. She got up and looked out the window, and she said she did see a man in a dark blue jacket very close to the Tippit car at the time of the shooting, and that he was short and pudgy. Oswald was 5'10" and 165 pounds. He wasn't pudgy. That was another thing about the question. Oswald's clothes, especially the jacket. Did he have on a light blue, a dark blue jacket or a white jacket? Every witness that I have talked to over the years said that Lee Harvey Oswald was wearing either a light gray jacket or a white jacket. And there's a lot of difference between light gray and white and dark blue. Dark blue is almost black, or navy blue. Every one of them. But a block away from the Tippit shooting, two jackets were found. The white jacket and a dark blue jacket were found in the alley behind Crawford and Jefferson. Was it a plant? Was it something that happened that somebody tried to throw off the investigation of the evidence? We don't know. They were found there. And Other witnesses saw other things over the years, and they came forward. But in all probability, to the evidence and testimony like the lady we just talked to today and other witnesses we've talked to, Lee Harvey Oswald did shoot J.D. Tippit, and he killed him. And that's how Tippit met his death. Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested at the Texas Theater at about 1:48. He was taken to the Dallas Police Department and held in custody until Sunday, November the 24th, when they were transferring him to the Dallas County Jail from the Dallas Police Department. And at 11:21 that Sunday morning, he was shot and killed by a man named Jack Ruby, who was a Dallas nightclub owner. Ma'am, I want to thank you for your time and inviting us into your home and talking with you. And your face will not be in this tape. Your voice will, as you make statements, and that's all. And we want to thank you. You are a part of history as a witness to things that subsequently happened after the assassination and the murder of Officer Tippit, as many people have been, some who are still living, some who have passed on, some who met unexplained deaths. But the history of anything this great should be known to the American public, for we still have the right to know. And that's why Mr. Allred and I are doing this now, and we're trying to just get the facts as to what happened. And we thank you very fluently.
You're welcome.